Welcome to the Whole Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you become a fat burner, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey guys, it's Debbie, and I'm so excited to talk to the founder of Bonafide Provisions, my favorite bone broth company, not only because I really like the taste of the bone broth, that it doesn't taste like bony broth, and because I'm not a big animal eater, but it's delicious tasting. It's more that I love Bonafide Provisions because of their story, because of the founder's story, her history as a nutritional therapy practitioner and nutritionist, and just the passion behind the company. And that's really important part to me of what companies I want to partner up with and support. And Bonafide Provisions is a company that I kept running into at nutritional therapy conference last few years, and then the Expo West Natural Products Show, I'd run into them there, and then I'd run into them at Paleo FX and KetoCon. So it's been kind of funny that I keep running into them. And then I started being able to order their bone broth because it's locally here in Seattle at Whole Foods. And then I just ordered their $150 shipment of Bonafide Provisions. So I have a freezer full of bone broth because I'm trying to use it weekly in my gut healing program. And I also use bone broth in my online group fat loss transformation program that we do, a 5-day jumpstart program in phase 1, then do phase 2 digestion, reset, repair. And that includes bone broth every day. So I don't make money from Bonafide. They do give us a discount coupon to hand out to my clients that are doing the programs, and we'll put it in the show notes for you listening to the show. But really think it's a great story that Sharon Brown, the clinical nutritionist, nutritional therapist, started this tribe, started this program and this product, and they have a whole lineup of not just bone broth. And all right, everyone, Sharon's on the line today, and she's the founder of Bonafide Provisions. I was just sharing before Sharon came on the show today to talk about how much I love the company, not just because the product is so good, but her team. I love her, your staff. And Sharon you're a nutritional therapy practitioner, but also clinical nutritionist, correct?
I am. I'm a clinical nutritionist as well as a GAPS practitioner.
Yeah. And talk about what GAPS is before kind of go deeper.
Sure. So GAPS is a program. It's an acronym for Gut and Psychology Syndrome. And it's a program that was written by a neurologist and a neurosurgeon, Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride. And she used this program that she coined as, calls it Gut and Psychology Syndrome, to heal her son of autism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's amazing. And so talk about kind of what led you to using bone broth in your practice and starting a company about it. So if you could kind of share that story with us, and we'll dive into the benefits of bone broth and how we can use it.
Of course. So I started using it in my practice really, but it really, the story goes back a little bit further than that. And it goes back to healing my son. And so I didn't really have any, nutrition degrees at the time that I started incorporating bone broth into our life. So I have 3 children, my husband and I do, and my husband and I have been together for 30 years, and we have 3 children. We have a 24-year-old, a 20-year-old, and a 17-year-old. And our middle one, when he was 6.5 months old, he developed his first sinus infection. So we took him to the pediatrician, and they put him on a round of antibiotics, and he pretty much stayed on a round of antibiotics off and on for the first 6 years of his life. We got on this crazy roller coaster ride with conventional medicine, and he had chronic sinus infections, ear infections, respiratory infections, breathing issues, skin issues. And so by the time he was in first grade, his teachers were telling us that he had ADD and that we should put him on Ritalin. And so we knew we needed to do something very different. We just didn't know what. And, this was 12, 13 years ago. There was not a lot of information on the internet. So I pulled him out of school the night that the teacher told me that. And I decided I was going to start homeschooling him. And then I came across this concept of just really healing the body through food and this whole food approach, eating the way that we did 100 years ago on a farm, and most importantly, bone broth. And so I thought, what do I have to lose? So we started incorporating bone broth into his diet and cooked everything from scratch. And within a year's time, we reversed all of his symptoms, completely healed him of everything. In fact, he's now 20 years old and hasn't been back to the doctors since that time. And so that prompted me to go back to school. I got several certifications in nutrition. I became a GAPS practitioner. I opened up a practice in Del Mar, California, and I worked with thousands of people all across the country, teaching them to heal through food. And it was really in my practice where I came through the challenge of getting people to make their own bone broth, because that was the mainstay of my program was broth and the mainstay of the GAPS program. And so I approached my husband, who was a chef at one point in his career, and we started making bone broth for my clients just in my office and to ship across the country. My practice was a thriving practice. I had a 4-month wait list to work with me. I was to the point at the end of my practice where I wasn't even accepting new clients. But my biggest challenge was getting people to make their own bone broth. And there wasn't one in the market that met my standards with the types of bones that needed to be sourced, the types of sea salt that I wanted to use, triple filtered water, organic. And so we started making our own. And here we are today. We never would have ever believed that we, in the natural channel at the retail, at the natural channel, so natural stores rather than conventional stores, our bone broth in the freezer set outsells chicken nuggets and pizza.
Yay! Wow, that's huge. That's something to celebrate right there.
That's right. It really is. Exactly.
So many questions and topics about bone broth. I always use bone broth in my nutritional therapy programs, and I started this 5-day jumpstart program a couple years ago. Then I include kind of a bone broth fast, and really love your product. And it's so unique. And as we've talked at the different trade shows over the last couple of years, there's a difference of quality bone broth. And then, there's a way that I figured out how to tell, and you guys now, say the same thing, and how to promote the difference of quality of bone broth. It's that gelatinous looking type of Jello when you put it in the refrigerator after you make it. So that was kind of my thing of testing out different bone broths and going, wait a minute, there's a big difference. This one's still liquidy and this one's like solid Jello, gelatinous. So what makes your product so different than other products out there, the bone broth that people can buy in the cartons?
Sure. So, bone broth, for the listeners who really don't understand the concept behind bone broth is when you take the bones of an animal, you cook them for long periods of time. And when you cook it for long periods of time over, somewhere that we found the sweet spot to about 18 hours, it pulls all the minerals, the nutrients, the collagen, the protein, the amino acids from the bones, puts it into this broth that we kind of refer to as bone broth, or, around here we call it liquid gold. And as I said, when I was looking for bone broth, there wasn't one on the market. I think, the most important things that you have to really think about with your bone broth are the source of the bones. So you want grass-fed, organic. Organic is really, really key, because I think oftentimes it'll say grass-fed, or it will also say, chicken bone broth on a box of broth. But if it's not organic, it means that whatever that animal has been consuming can be sprayed with pesticides. And I'm a huge proponent of getting rid of pesticides, not only out of our diet, but out of our animals' diets and out of our environment. Because I think the effects of these pesticides are actually going to be detrimental to not only us as human beings, but our planet. But I digress. So what really kind of makes that gelatinous quality is the longer cooking time and then the bones of the animals that you're using. So what you're going to find with a real bone broth that isn't watered down, that has the proper bone to water ratio, that has the longer cooking time, that isn't, like I said, filled with a filler broth like a vegetable broth, is that gelatinous quality. Now, know that not every single batch that you make or every single batch that we make is going to be the same consistency of gelatin, because you're dealing with animals. And so it's the way that I like to explain it is, think about like when you go to a butcher and you order, say, a filet mignon, you order a filet mignon from rancher A, and then you order a filet mignon from rancher B. Well, the filet mignon from rancher A may have a lot more marbling than the rancher B, but they were farmed the exact same way. And so every bone is unique, every animal is unique, but you definitely should see some type of viscosity to your broth, and it shouldn't be just this kind of liquid, stock that we are familiar with that's, really lined with the grocery store shelves.
Mm-hmm. And let's go into the benefits of bone broth, because I think people are hearing of it more and more. And let's talk about the benefits of it, and then kind of work north to south, how it helps liver function, liver detoxification, phase 1 and 2 pathways, and then digestive repair and leaky gut.
Sure. So, the benefits of bone broth, I had no idea the benefits of bone broth back when I was healing my son as a mom. And I just knew that I needed to do something different. And it kind of just innately resonated with me. It was like this whole idea of chicken soup. Okay, that there had to be something there. I mean, I know we've screwed up, the chicken soup that's on the shelf, but yes, exactly. But grandma knew best, right? And so there was a reason why 100 years ago, and Jewish grandmothers today call it, Jewish penicillin, or even Asian cultures make sure that they have some type of bone or stock in so many of their broths. And so there was just something like, oh, this kind of sounds correct to me. But now we know. And now, now that we've been able to understand just from a lab perspective by pulling labs on these products and scientifically, yes, there's the collagen. I mean, Americans, and for good reason, have all jumped on the collagen craze, because we understand that our body at some point has a limited ability to make your own collagen, and adding collagen to your diet is a very, good therapy for wellness. And so, yes, it has one of the most bioavailable sources of collagen that you can purchase. It's not a powder. Your body understands it very quickly. You put that collagen on your tongue, your body knows exactly what to do with it. So that's a great benefit. But for me, it's all about the amino acids, specifically L-glutamine. So L-glutamine is the preferred fuel source for the cells that line your gut. And when the L-glutamine comes in contact with the cells that line your gut will react by spitting out this little bit of mucus. And what that mucus does is it helps line your mucosal lining of the gut. So people that maybe have like leaky gut or diverticulitis, Crohn's disease, celiac disease, and quite frankly, the GAPS program, the whole idea behind that program was that it focused on your gut health. And gut health is so important because we know that up to 85% of our immune system is in your gut.
Yeah, I started hearing about the GAPS about 10 years ago when my sister-in-law was doing it with her daughter, because she had all these food sensitivity and health issues. And it's, it really was ahead of the time of figuring out how bone broth can be so healing.
Oh, yeah. And, it's what's so interesting about bone broth is trending, but it's nothing new,
Yeah.
And I didn't know that. I mean, I didn't know that, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when I was trying to figure out how to heal my son. And really the reason that many of us didn't know about it is because it was something that, if you talk to many grandmothers, I mean, I had a cousin here from Germany this past weekend, and he said to me, my grandmothers and, our aunts in Germany always had bones cooking as a part of their soup. They knew that was the good part of it. And what happened was, just like anything else, and we're still seeing it today, particularly with natural foods, things like kombucha and now bone broth, is that big food companies come in and they realize that they can make a buck off of the consumer. And instead of taking, bone broth and doing it the way that you do it, just like you do at home, they put this stuff in boxes and cans and tell you that it's bone broth. And it's actually just, a glorified version of water and chicken flavoring. Yeah. And so that's really what happened. I mean, I grew up in a generation that, my mom used Swanson's broth, in her chicken stew. And if you looked at the ingredients, it was so far removed from the bone broth that she had grown up on. So I think it's just really now consumer awareness, and really this approach of so many people want to know, they want functional food, right? We want food that, we were talking this morning, we want food that loves us back. And so, meaning this food is going to be nourishing for us. It's going to fuel this machine. And that's kind of the benefits of these superfoods like bone broth and things like kombucha, a real kombucha, not the stuff that's now lining the supermarkets that are made with a powder and really never even, a SCOBY mushroom that goes through a fermentation process. So, yeah.
I know it's crazy that just the processing of foods, but I think it's, as your company grows too, people want to probably start to buy you out, and you lose the quality of it and the control over what goes into the product. And I think, it's hard for people probably to keep true to their roots and not get excited by the big guys taking over. 'Cause it seems like all the little companies eventually get sold over to the big guys.
Yeah. And I think that, that there are companies that can do that dance really beautifully, and where they do have the big guys come in, but the big guys are learning from the small guys. And they're realizing that what the big guys were doing back in the 1960s and 70s, when we didn't have something called the internet, also known as an encyclopedia in your hand, that the consumer is very smart, and that the consumer now does demand an answer of what is in my food and how is it going to affect me. I mean, but it's still happening. I mean, there are small bone broth companies out there that if you go and you turn that box around, one bone broth company that's on the supermarket shelf, you get their box broth, you pick up their chicken broth. The first ingredient is chicken bone broth, which is great. We're all for that. That's wonderful. The second ingredient is vegetable broth, because they're watering it down for a profit. Those are the kind of things that you as a consumer have to be so careful about. And so, you do have to make sure that you understand what's going into your products, because there's a lot of deception, is even in the natural food, industry.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So let me go back to the benefits. I know just looking at your website reminded me of some great tips for athletes, why endurance athletes that are stressing their body a lot, really want to work on recovery and repair, and how chronic stress impacts the whole athlete from the inside out, how important it is, as you already mentioned, the immune system, 70 to 80, 85% is in your guts, and the importance of healing our gut and keeping it from being damaged all the time from chronic stressors, but also the joint health you have listed too, the gelatin, the collagen that really helps strengthen the skeletal system and rebuild connective tissue, ease joint pain, and reduce inflammation. These are key factors that influence an athlete's competitive edge if they're going to recover and be ready for the next workout or the next race. Because a lot of people overtrain and under recover. They don't realize that, as we talked earlier, nutrition is, how you should feed your body for healing, and how it's medicinal benefits are so important.
Absolutely. I mean, athletes in particular really need, I mean, it's, we've all heard this saying, it's 90% of what you eat and 10% of, how you exercise and work out. And really it's like a car, if you put in the premium gas, you're going to get premium performance. It's the same thing with an athlete. And it's quite fascinating, bone broth and what it can do for athletes. I mean, last month, I'm not allowed to say which team, but we shipped an entire pallet to an NFL team because their nutritionists are using the bone broth in making all of the team's lunches for them. And they actually have it on tap in their little cafeteria.
Instead of beer, they have a bone broth tap.
Yeah, exactly. So we set them up with percolators, and so they walk over and they can either grab their coffee or their bone broth. And it's really amazing how you can reverse a lot of issues with an approach with food. And I think a lot of times athletes, especially big football players, it's all about the gluten and carb loading. And I'm always a huge proponent, even before I became a bone broth slinger and I was working with athletes, to incorporate bone broth. I mean, we know that the Lakers used it, Kobe Bryant uses bone broth, and for a good reason. I'm not saying Kobe Bryant, I just want to put this out there, I'm not saying Kobe Bryant uses our bone broth, and I'm not saying I'm not allowed to say what teams and what athletes do, because then I would be, falsely endorsing. But we do know that these are people who have, and often do, let us know that they are a consumer of bone broth.
Well, Dr. Kate Shanahan worked with those guys, the LA Lakers, for a long time. And she's all about animal, the nose to tail bone broth. So I'm sure she plugged some ideas into their nutrition program.
Absolutely.
So, leaky gut, I think gut issues are a huge issue for a lot of athletes, because probably high carb, sugary stuff, and the stress they put on their body, training and living life as a race, as I always say. But some signs of leaky gut, as you have a great blog on your website, just is puffy eyes, skin issues, swelling, weight fluctuations, joint pain, and of course, digestive issues as bloating and gas. And a lot of times as FDN practitioner, we say, the symptoms can be far removed from the actual cause, and leaky gut can be we assume most everybody has some level of leaky gut. Would you not agree?
Absolutely. I mean, it really was. In fact, when I had my nutrition practice, I don't care what you came to me for, we always started on gut. So if you were having hot flashes, you were female, you were having hot flashes, you were male, you were having low testosterone, hormone issues, everything, always we started with the gut. The gut is so foundational, and leaky gut is so prevalent. And most, I would say, 90% of the people that I worked with had some form of leaky gut, and the symptoms weren't all the same. But I did find that when you focused on the gut and repairing the gut, that laid the foundation, and then the rest of it just was easy. You just started to peel back the layers of each symptom. But absolutely, and we live in a very, very toxic world. Even those of us who are clean eaters, and we consume a clean diet, meaning organic, pesticide free. I mean, just my office that I'm sitting in, the paint on the walls, the air conditioning that I'm breathing in, the exhaust of the cars that are driving by. We live in a very toxic environment, and our liver is only able to really kind of filter out so much. And so oftentimes all of these kind of things that I'm talking about, the environmental issues, the antibiotics that are in our foods and our food supply, our animals, the dairy that we eat, will start to cause these little tears in the mucosal lining of the gut. I mean, stress. Stress can cause it, so yes, focusing on the gut is really key.
That's what we do. As I just became a FDN practitioner, and combining that with the nutritional therapy practitioner work, and putting all this together, it's just so essential to look, as we say, north to south, working on what you're eating. And I keep saying when you eat and how you eat. And then also I just thought of today, it's more why are you eating? So the emotional part of eating, but also just the importance of eating foods that are not irritating your gut. And as FDN practitioner, we look at all these hidden internal stressors with the functional lab testing, and we don't do one lab at a time or treat the lab results, and we don't treat symptoms. Is just putting it all together. And so much of it, they all overlap. Like you just mentioned, leaky gut, digestive dysfunction, stress, external stressors, overload of toxins, and then congested liver. And then you're eating foods that you're allergic to. So, that's why we do these 5 different labs, because they all impact the gut and they all impact your stress, overload of your stressors. So it's just so important. But how does doing a bone broth fast, or what can we do with bone broth that helps all that? Is it like a 3-day fast, or just have 1 cup a day, or what's your kind of protocol for fixing and repairing leaky gut and the liver function?
Yeah. So every kind of person is different and the approach is different, and it really depends on where the person is on their wellness journey. And so, I would work with people that had advanced stages of Crohn's disease that were being told that they had to have part of their colon removed, right? And so their protocol with bone broth is very different than somebody that's coming in that's saying, I'm having some bloating issues and I'm burping a lot, or I'm having bloating issues and I have a lot of gas, which, by the way, you should not be burping and you should not be farting. And if you are, that means that you are having digestive issues or you're eating the wrong kinds of food. And that's always very surprising to men that I talk to, and women are so happy to hear that. And then they go home and they tell their husbands, you should not be farting as much as you do.
But people think that's normal though, right? They think that's the way I am. I've been like that my whole life. I've always had gas. I've always been bloated. I have diarrhea after I eat. That's my normal.
Yes, exactly. So the protocols are very different, but I will say this, look, when I was a practitioner and I was a GAPS practitioner, and this is something that Dr. Natasha taught us, I was in her first ever graduating class of GAPS practitioners. And I did that because I had done the program and I believed in the program so much that once I found out that she was going to go across the world and train practitioners in this very protocol that healed her son, I signed up. And one of the things that she taught in her classes, and this is kind of her methodology, which I then adopted in my practices, I never did any type of testing unless, look, I'm not talking about peanut allergies here. I'm talking about just basic, if somebody comes to me and said, I have a peanut allergy, of course, we're not going to give them peanuts, but most of the people that I came to me, they were sick. If there were issues going on, I wouldn't do any lab tests until I put them on the GAPS protocol. And then we would do the lab tests after the GAPS protocol. And that's with the GAPS program, because so many times healing the gut resolved so many of the issues that would have been red flags, that what I found is, like, you get in this motion of, okay, instead of healing the gut first, okay, we're going to focus on your thyroid. Okay, we're going to focus on your blood sugar handling. Okay, I'm going to focus on this. When, guess what? When you heal the gut, all of that went away. And then we didn't have to even worry about all of that. So like you talked about the north to south, for me, the gut was the north. It was like, start there, and then downstream, everything else oftentimes would resolve itself. So the protocol, all that to say that the protocol is very different, but in general, the idea is that you want to sneak bone broth into your diet as much as you possibly can. So if that means drinking a cup a day, great. If that means you can't drink a cup a day because it's either hot, you don't like it, or whatever, what we always suggest is cook with it. Think about bone broth in the place of liquid for everything that you use liquid for. So you can freeze it into ice cube trays, add a couple of ice cubes to your smoothie. You should not be able to taste that bone broth in there. Now you have this amazing collagen, protein, amino acids, minerals in your protein shake, saute your vegetables with it, braise your meats with it, use it in place of rice or quinoa. And now you see what you're doing is you're taking this superfood and you are kind of super powerhousing your meal programs throughout the week.
Yeah, I think it's just getting in a habit, and I start just pull one out of the freezer, then I have one and have it in the fridge, and then I make it, and then it's something I like to do every night because I can't eat dinner. I don't have children to feed, so we don't eat dinner late at night. So sometimes I just want a cup of broth, and I was just call it healing broth because I didn't like the bone broth word. Took me a long time to get used to I'm drinking bones, but just having this healing broth each night just is so soothing to me.
Yeah. So many people do that, and then there's others. I mean, look, when I was healing my son, or you're a family that's trying to sneak it in, 6 weeks in, and he's gagging down everything that I'm giving him. And he's, poor little guy, he just cannot take another, cup of broth, no matter what I did to it. I was like, okay, we're going to get creative here. So I would put it in, I would make grain-free waffles. I would put it in his waffles. I made a smoothie. Oh, we're putting it in your smoothie. And so there's all different ways to skin a cat, but it's really this idea of just getting it into your diet program, somehow. And I don't even use the word diet. I call it a food program.
Yes. Thank you. I can't stand the word diet.
Me too.
And I mojo from growing up myself.
It's just so bad. And when I was practicing many years ago, and it was like the GAPS diet, I would say, we're going to call it the GAPS program, because diet conjures up restriction. And really it's this kind of this food program. And I've adopted a phrase from a doctor that's very popular right now. And unfortunately, I don't know his name because I was probably scrolling through the gram and this is where I found it. But his whole platform is, are you consuming foods that love you back? It's not about bad food. Is this food bad for me? It's like, is this food loving you back? And are you in relationships? Typically, we aren't in relationships with people that don't love us back. And it's really, I love that approach with your food. Is this food that I'm going to consume going to love me back?
That's great. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
That's, all these different diets and everyone's, keto carnivore doing this. And I read all these group pages and I keep saying this on the podcast that everyone's, as we learn in nutrition coaching, individual, and everyone reacts differently to foods, and not all healthy, natural foods are going to be good for everyone because we'll have food sensitivities and our genetics are different and our gut biome. So it's just, I don't like to think of it as a diet. It has to be sustainable, but I think the bone broth is something I like to include in my group coaching programs and have people take because it has such good amount of amino acids and the minerals in it that really, for people exercising, I find it's good recovery drink for athletes. And then also if people are being sick, I have my clients take bone broth. And then if we're working on the digestion system, that's usually my go-to food.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and so we've started out with our bone broth, of course, with our company. We now have a line of 6 soups, all really, and I really proudly say this from a nutritionist standpoint, they are the cleanest soups that you will find on the market. They're in the frozen set, all with a bone broth base, and of course, organic vegetables. And then no citric acid, no funky stuff, no carrageenan, no guar gums. And then we have our new keto cups, and that's simply our bone broth, our chicken bone broth, and those have the good fats, things like MCT oil, coconut oil, and grass-fed butter.
And they're so good. And are those sold in more grocery stores? Are they getting out in the market more, or just online?
Yeah, so they are online. They are in Sprouts nationwide. You will be able to find them in like Natural Grocers, some of those grocery stores. And then we hope that you will be finding them very soon in Whole Foods as well. And possibly in some conventional channels, which I'm not allowed to speak about yet, but some big name other conventional retailers as well.
Because it comes in a cup that you drink out of, so you think you can get them into more cafe to have a restaurant to go foods.
Right. And, I mean, they're frozen. So all of our products are frozen because I believe that frozen food is Mother Nature's preservative, and that you can freeze food without doing anything funky to that food to be able to preserve it. And so, all of our products are in the frozen set at this point, and they are frozen. So you simply just take it out of the freezer. If you're a person that uses the microwave, pop it in the microwave. If not, you can put it on the stovetop and empty it back into the Starbucks type cup and take it on the go, especially,
so smart.
At the gym. Yeah. Yeah.
Very smart. Good job. Now the lemon has lemon and turmeric in it, which I'm told to take turmeric. I just saw my acupuncturist today, and it's like, take 1,000, it's probably milligrams of turmeric a day if any inflammation in your body. But turmeric is just like the other healing food for recovery and repair.
Yeah.
The bone broth.
For inflammation. And that's why we put it in there. And actually the keto, our keto cups, the reason we launched these and really all of our products is this is how my husband drank his bone broth every morning. He would get his chicken bone broth. He would add a healthy fat to it, some turmeric for inflammation, a little bit of lemon juice, and off he would go. And we started sampling this at trade shows and food shows, and people would lose their minds over it.
Yeah.
They were just like,
there's
this
a reason.
Is insane. Yeah. And so we thought, well, let's launch it. Let's make this easier for people.
Well, it's what I did with my 5-day jump starts, my phase 1 and my 30-day liver detox and digestive repair program that I was talking about, that I use the bone broth, but some days we'll try to do more liquids. So I just have them do bone broth as much as needed. And I told them to put some grass-fed butter in it because I add some turmeric and, just add some seasoning to it if needed. And it is, amazing. And it's so filling that you think people are always like, oh my gosh, they're all paranoid because they're not eating solid foods for a day that they're going to, have issues, but they're like, oh my gosh, I'm not hungry.
Yeah, it's true. And, another thing that I always tell people to do is when you add the butter, get one of these little frothers and then you froth it. And it is so good. It's, it really is mouthwatering, and you just have to try it. It's just one of those things that you have to try it. And people are loving this product.
Yeah, it's so good. And you were even on TV. I had it recorded for you on is it PaleoFX or KetoCon? They were interviewing you in Austin this past year.
Yeah, it's been fun. Yeah, so we were at PaleoFX. We were on the local news there, and then we've kind of actually been going all over the nation. We've been invited to many of the local Fox News stations. So there, we did Dallas, we did Texas, we've done here in Los Angeles, we did the local news, we've done the news here in San Diego, a few others that I'm forgetting right now. But yes, morning news shows touting the benefits of bone broth and really telling people to take the smoothie challenge. I think, oftentimes we start as athletes and people who just want to get on a wellness journey, we start incorporating far too many, powders and supplements. And we encourage people, eat real food. And if you need to powder or supplement, there's a place for that, always a place for that. But, you should be definitely trying to get all of your nourishment through real food. So we did a smoothie challenge where we challenged people to put bone broth in their smoothie and they couldn't taste it. And so it was really fun.
Well, perfect timing for the new year as I keep trying to get, people to do the bone broth and do the 30-day program that I run online, but it's also to get people to not do so many of these other weight loss programs that drive me nuts because it's all packaged foods that people somehow lose weight, but they often gain it back. And they do this 30-10 program we have up here. And then there's this new Evolve 180, and it's a bunch of stuff with fake foods in it. And it's like, no, that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to teach you how to eat and improve your relationship with food and when you eat and eating real food and healing foods with these nutrients as the bone broth have in it. And it's just so annoying. All these other companies win over the fast and easy program.
It is, and look, I constantly encourage people when I was in my practice, think about the way that we used to eat 100 years ago on a farm when we didn't have the disease states that we do today. You know, our body is an amazing machine, and we have to really think of it as a machine. And this machine has been created to be fueled and nourished and healed and to thrive using the food that is grown here on the earth. And so the more we take that and process it and turn it into things that it was never originally meant to be in its most natural state, I think that's when we get into challenges. And like I said, you know, that doesn't mean everything, but you know, if you can really try to heal this body using real food. That's what I did for my son. And that's what I did for all of thousands of patients that I worked with.
Well, I love it. Thank you for doing what you're doing. And I'm glad I was able to get you on the show. I just love your product and your team, and you guys are one big family. It's great to see people with passion and purpose and following their goals and mission to make an impact in our society. You're paying it forward.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. We never, ever started this company to start a CPG company, consumer packaged good company. That's what that means for all of you. And the other thing in the CPG industry is that there's acronyms for everything. And so, you know, we never did. And here we are. And, you know, our name, Bonafide Provisions, Bonafide means real or genuine. And then provisions means food for the journey. And that's how this all started with our little guy. And that's our mantra. And that's really, that's my heart and my passion, is continuing to not only be challenged within, you know, our own company and the products that we put out, but also to challenge other food companies to do the same. And then the consumer, you know, to vote with your dollars, support all of those companies that are out there that are trying to make a difference. So it's an honor, it's a privilege, and you know, thank you for letting me chat with you and all of your friends that are listening.
Yeah, and you guys will put a link in the show notes we have a discount code for your first order. And I love your bundles. So if you guys are looking at the new year and starting to take care of the whole you from the inside out, there's a keto cleanse kit, and then there's a Bonafide sampler and the big broth box. So, you know, load up the freezer and just get started on even just having 1 cup a day. It's pretty amazing.
Yay.
And tasty. So thank you, Sharon. We'll let you go. I know you're busy, and we'll look forward to seeing you next year at all the conferences.
I can't wait to see you. I love when you come over to the booth. So we will have a cup of broth waiting for you.
I always come by and get my samples. And I'll be speaker at KetoCon this year. So I'm excited to be a part of the community a little bit more, helping share
I will ditch my booth and come and sit in your audience.
Good. Thank you. All right. Everyone, find bonafideprovisions.com, and you can find it at most grocery stores now in the freezer section. So check it out.
Thanks for listening to the Whole Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at wholeathletepodcast.com. You can help us continue and grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and see you next time.